Welcome back to Podiatry Marketing. I'm your host, Jim McDannald, joined as always by my co-host, Tyson Franklin. Tyson, how's it going today?
I'm fantastic today, Big Jim. I hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, things are going well. What are we going to chat about today?
Today, I want to talk about creating your own speaking opportunities. And I know public speaking is not for everybody, and I'll touch on that at the end. But this came about in 2018. I went to Vancouver, and then we went and caught up with some friends. Went to Vancouver for a family holiday, and then we were catching up with some friends in Powell River, and then I was off down to Phoenix for Business Black Ops. And what had happened, and I ended up speaking at the Powell River Chamber of Commerce luncheon, which they usually held every month. And it didn't happen by accident. It came about, it was something that I actually created for nothing. And how it actually came about was back in the day, I was reading when newspapers were still around. I don't know if we even have a local newspaper, but when the newspaper was there, I remember flicking through it one day and there was this ad and it was promoting this speaker from out of town who was going to be speaking at the Cairns Chamber of Commerce luncheon. And it had the topic there. And I looked at it and went, I could have spoken on that. It was a really simple topic. I'm thinking I could probably name 10 people in Cairns that could have spoken on that exact same topic. And then it reminded me of a quote I saw somewhere once that said, even Jesus had to leave town for people to listen to him. And it made me realize that by them inviting someone out of town who was speaking on a subject we all could have spoken on, but it created this intrigue and mystery about, oh, who is this guy? And all of a sudden, it was a booked out event. And I thought, okay, if they could do that in Cairns with somebody, and I went along to the talk, and the talk was great, but once again, nothing I couldn't have probably done myself or somebody else in Cairns could have presented. I thought, if that person created that excitement in Cairns, could I do the same thing in Powell River? I thought, I know they've got a Chamber of Commerce, going to be there for a week, catching up with some family friends. So I sent an email to Powell River, and all of a sudden, and I just said, oh, how you doing? I've written a couple of books. I'm an author. I'm coming over from Australia. I happen to be passing through there. If you happen to have a luncheon on that week, I'd love to speak. And I got an email back that same day going, yes, please, pretty much. I went, oh, okay, that was very quick. And the next thing I found out later, they didn't have a luncheon that week, but they put it on one especially because there was this famous Australian author coming to town. There was a write-up about me in the paper. There was my photo. There were the books I'd written. And next thing, but they normally had 10 or 12 people at their luncheons when they had them on. There were 50 people there. I was met by the mayor when I arrived. He came to meet me. The mayor wanted a photo with this famous Australian author. Then there was a write-up in the paper with me after the event. I was like a celebrity in that town for a week. And my wife and daughter just shaking their heads going, this is so funny. The friends that I was staying with, they're just shaking their head. For some reason, everyone in town thinks you're my brother. That they're my famous brother who's come back to town. And I go, they do realize I'm not Canadian, I'm Australian. So it was, and what it made me realize, the biggest lesson from it was, if you want to, you can't wait for opportunities to present themselves. You have to make things happen. And I could have not sent that email, or I could have sent that email and they might have said no, which wouldn't have made any difference. That was a long speech.
No, that's a great example of when you take the time to chase after an opportunity, how you're more likely to get it. If you just sat around, not sent that email, expected things, have somebody find you on Amazon and your book about you and invite you, that's probably never going to happen. But by taking the initiative and really taking action, you made that happen. And I think it's a pretty powerful example that can be used by people in our audience because we have things that are important to the health and lives of people, right? And like you talked about, like when you get in front of an audience, you don't just have to be a great public speaker, but it's a great opportunity to multiply your voice and your reach. You know, a lot of things we do in life has to be one-on-one, and you have to push really hard just to do things on a one-on-one basis. But when you're in front of an audience, like you said, you got 2 newspaper articles, you're in front of 50 people. It can really it can really spread the word of mouth about who you are and what you're doing. And there's a lot of it's key takeaways that can be beneficial to our listeners.
And it's one of those things, like I said, the worst thing that could have happened is they said no. But there was no way the Chamber of Commerce in Powell River was ever going to find me on Amazon and was ever going to reach out to me and say, hey, Tyson, if you're ever in Powell River, would you please like to do a talk? It really was up to me to do it. My only regret from that trip was that I should have done the same thing with the Chamber of Commerce in Vancouver. And I should have done the same thing with the Chamber of Commerce in Phoenix, where I was going. I never thought about that. I just thought, oh, I'll do this Power River one because I wasn't expecting them to say yes. And when they did, I got so excited about it that my focus went onto that and I forgot about the other two places I was visiting. So to me, I think it's, if you have a message, if you have a podiatry message that is worth sharing, then I think you should be out there sharing it. And now it might just be like locally, might be to Rotary groups or different other like local organizations in Australia. Lions and Apex are two other big organizations. There's one in Cairns I used to do, the Cairns Independent Retirees Association. And I used to come and do a talk for them once a year. They'd have about 50 people there. I'd turn up, do the talk, and every single time, about 10 to 15 of them would become patients because these were people who were retired but had too much money that they couldn't get any money off the government. So they used to get together and work out better ways of actually maximizing the funds that they had. So a room full of people who have too much money. And I did a different talk with them each year. I just mix it up a little bit. But if you've got a broader message, then I think you should share it with the profession. It's no different what you and I do, Jim. But with this podcast, we have an interest in marketing. I think we're both quite good when it comes to actually marketing podiatry businesses. So we put this podcast together so we can share our message. So this is like our way of public speaking every week.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't always think I'm the best talker or best speaker. There's lots of ums and ahs. Hopefully you're not counting them on the podcast when you're listening. But I think it is an opportunity, like you talked about, when you have a message and you have a goal to help out either your community or your profession, taking that initiative, putting yourself out there, trying to improve and get better. There's no substitute for just doing the work, right? You can talk about how you want to have a huge podcast or you want to have a huge audience or you want to make an impact, but until you're willing to push publish on that first episode, find somebody to do a co-host with you, do it most every week, get it behind the mic, turn on the lights and get out there and put yourself kind of out there. That's the first step.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's taking that first step of actually doing it. And there's no way that if someone had told me, like when I was in my late 20s, oh, one day, Tyson, you'll be standing in front on a stage in Liverpool in front of 1,000 people and doing this talk, I would have said, there is no way on earth that will ever happen. I said, unless I'm wearing brown pants, because that's what will happen when I get up on stage. I said, I won't be able to talk. And the first, I was able to get through primary school, high school, university without ever giving a public presentation. I just didn't do it. I said, you give me zero. I don't care. I'm not doing it. And I didn't do my first one. I think I was 26. And a doctor invited me to speak somewhere. And for some reason I said yes, I don't know why. And it was the worst presentation I've ever seen in my life. Anyone who thinks they're no good at public speaking, if I had a video of that day, they would just go, my God, that was atrocious. I turned a 45-minute talk into 4.5 minutes. And I ummed. I couldn't get words out. I probably passed wind as well. I don't know. It was awful. And I walked out and the doctor came out, put his hand on my shoulder. And I thought he was going to say to me, hey, Tyson, it wasn't as bad as what you think. You still got the message across. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said to me, Tyson, that was the worst presentation I've ever seen in my life. He said, it was embarrassing. He goes, if anyone ever asks you to do public speaking again, please say no. Never put anybody through that again. And it was really fun. I got my car and I went, we can only get better from here. And for some reason, I just kept doing it. And then I'd read somewhere that when you learn to do public speaking, even poorly, even though most people, when you're nervous, the audience doesn't know you're nervous. They think you're excited. But I read somewhere the day you decide to do public speaking or you get better at it or you put yourself out there, the more opportunities will actually open up for you. And like I know, I was probably even in wasn't to my 30s that I started to get better at it. I knew I was the president of my rugby union club and I didn't go to the presentation night because I didn't want to have to get up and do a talk. I'd won the trophy for best back at one of the positions and I knew I'd won it that year. I think I was 32 and I didn't turn up to get the trophy because I knew I would have had to give a speech. I said, I'd just give it to me next year when I turn up. So I missed out on so many things in life because of nerves, because I was too scared to do it. But once I did it, things just started to improve.
I was one of those people as a student or resident where I'm just sitting at conferences thinking that, I would never want to get up on stage. I couldn't imagine doing that. And yeah, it's amazing when you have a message or something you believe strongly in, how it gives you that confidence to go ahead and put yourself out there. I think that's like I talked
Mm.
about, taking that first step. There's going to be some fear. You can prepare. That's one way to help to like limit how scary it feels. At the very worst, you fail, and like you said, someone puts an arm around you, say that was horrible, and you get up and you fall down once, and you get up again, and you keep on getting up, and before you know it, you're decent, and you're getting a message out there. You're helping people, and you're making a difference. So I think just everyone's got that fear. Anyone who says that they were natural from the first talk they ever gave is full of it. Just there's different ways to address it.
That's what Mark Twain says. There's two types of speakers: those that get nervous and liars.
Exactly. Damn liars, I think so.
And it's funny that I remember reading something once and it said, in Australia, number one fear in Australia, public speaking. Number two, death by fire. So people would rather die in a fire than actually do public speaking. And what's funny, I think in New Zealand or in Ireland or something, the number one fear is snakes, and they don't have snakes. So isn't it crazy that we're afraid of things that probably will never happen? Something I want to touch on, because there's a few things that I've got a few ideas on how people can get into public speaking to overcome some of those fears. But one thing I just wanted to touch on too, whenever you're doing a speaking event anywhere, even if it's in front of two people, get someone to try and encourage someone to take photos of you while you're talking, and make sure you tell them what you're trying to do with those photos. So you don't want every photo of just a big close up of your head, and you don't want a photo where you're that far away, you're not sure whether it's you or some stranger walking down the street. So I want a photo like me here and the screen in this position so I can use it for, say, a quote. Or then I want a close-up one that I can use for something else. Or I want one from the side, if you can, that may show the crowd. So if they have the ability to do that, do it. The reason it's good if you can get some photos taken, even if they are bad ones, is you can then use them in your social media. And when I had one of the talks that I had done, the Power River one, when I did that, my wife took some photos of me. I then posted it on our Facebook page and the social media when I got home. Somebody from the Australian Practice Managers Association saw that photo and saw the topic that I spoke on. They then approached me and said, "Hey, we're going to be doing our annual conference in Cairns. Would you like to speak?" Yeah, and they paid me, which was even better. So that wasn't too bad. And then from that one, somebody that was there who was a practice manager invited me to be the MC at a four-wheeler convention.
There you go.
Yeah. I've been on a four-wheeler probably twice in my life. And here I am being the MC, bringing guests up and asking them questions about four-wheeler safety. But it's surprising, just as your confidence builds, these opportunities actually open up to you. We should talk about overcoming the fear, though.
Yeah, what are those steps? What actions can people take to inch towards public speaking, getting in front of 1,000 people like you did in Liverpool?
Yeah, it's not easy. Okay, so I've written down some steps here that I want to go through, which I think are important. One is we all know that not everyone likes public speaking. Look at if you're wherever you are right now, look around you, whoever's around you, majority of people do not like public speaking. So you're in the majority. So you're not weird that public speaking frightens you. I'm always impressed with my daughter. She's like 19 now, and always been impressed, even from a little kid. She's never had a fear about public speaking. Just never bothered her. And I mentioned something to her one day. She said, "Why does it frighten you? Or why did it frighten you?" I went, "I don't know, I just get nervous, get me scared." "But why? You're just getting up there talking." And I think this is the one I was talking to, like a 7-year-old who's pepping me up. This 7-year-old's trying to figure out, why was I nervous getting up in front of people?
Yeah.
And for her, it was just natural. And even this day, I still don't think it bothers her. But she also did dancing. So she performed every year in concerts and dance competitions. So I think just the presence of being on stage and being in front of people, I think if you do that from an early age, it just seems to come natural. But for the majority of us, not natural. Obviously, Jim, you didn't dance.
I was not a dancer. No, I made some weddings on occasion when I was a kid, but not on stages.
Yeah, even speaking at weddings, like I'm speaking at my wedding, frightened the hell out of me. Anyway, so I think the first thing you should do is start small and talk about something you know extremely well. Just start really small, a really small group. So you might hold an information evening in your clinic, and it could just be for a hand-picked group of patients or patients that got a certain problem. Pick a particular topic, and you might do a 10 or 15-minute talk. and you do 100 times more than anybody in that room when it comes to that particular topic on podiatry. Nobody knows it better than what you do. And if you're not sure, next time you have a patient room, ask them questions. Oh, can you tell me what this is? Can you tell me what that is? Explain it. They won't know it. And to me, all you're really doing is what you would do when you're with a patient and you're explaining a problem. You're just expanding on it a little bit more. You might pick a couple of problems and you're doing it in front of a few patients. And like I said, start small. And once you get your confidence up, then you can start building up the numbers. But when you get more organized and you're feeling better, then you can pick a particular subject that you've done numerous times with your patients. And then you might go and talk to a group of physios or doctors on that particular subject, knowing you know more about that topic than anybody else. It's a really simple one. It's a simple way to get started.
No, that makes sense.
And yeah, because one of the talks that I did here, I wrote it down, the title was Orthotics and Different Materials. That was the title of the talk that I did for every Rotary group. When I went and visited, I did it for patients. When I went and visited doctors and physios, that was my topic, orthotics and different orthotic materials and why we use them. There was no way they were going to know anything about that or more than what I did. It's impossible for that to happen. You can grab the 10 best physios in the world, put them in a room. I'll tell you right now, you'll know more about orthotics and more about orthotic materials than anyone. So it's a simple talk to do. You should be able to talk about it for 10 or 15 minutes. You can have demos there and wave them about. It's a no-brainer, that one.
But like you talked about, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it and the more you can find your own personality within the talk. So maybe the first 2 or 3 times you're doing it, it feels you're not necessarily memorizing it, but it's more dry and not as interesting. But as you get older, more experience with the talk, more experience in practice, then you can really add some examples, add a little flair to the talk. Actually, maybe what parts of the talk people engage with, right? So if people are interested to hear more about how they're made or how they're customized or the way you fit them, then you can build more of that story into your talk. So I think being receptive to who your audience is, number one, and then what they like in the story or the talk can be helpful for the kind of feedback you receive.
Yeah, when I do the 12-week reboot, after each session, and even when I go to do the 2-day live version of it, at the end of each session, I will normally always ask, what was your biggest takeaway from this? Because in my head, I know what the biggest points was that I wanted them to take away. So when I ask them, what was your biggest takeaway? If they mention the points that I wanted to really point out, then I know I've done my job. But if they start mentioning a few things, I'm like, wow, okay, I need to probably put more emphasis on the things that I wanted to talk about. Or because sometimes you'll do a talk and someone will find something that you said, oh, when you said this, that was the most interesting thing. You go, really? Was it? And then other people go, yeah, it was. That was really interesting. So whenever I used to do a talk, I do it the reboot. Anytime I did a public speaking thing, afterwards, I would sit down as soon as I could and go, if I did that talk again tomorrow, what would I change? And I'd note down what changes I'd make. Sometimes you walk away and go, I would change nothing. That went so well. And I would just leave the talk as it was. But I think it's good to reflect on it as well.
For sure.
And the bottom line at the end of all this, the more public speaking you do, especially in your local area, the more patient referrals you will get. It just works that way. You're in a room of 50 people and you're doing a talk, whether it's at a businesswomen's group or a chamber of commerce, anything locally where you've got numbers there and you're doing a talk, talking to 50 people at once is better than talking to 50 people one at a time. It's a lot faster and it just has more impact for your business. So I found once I overcame the fear, and it took years, it didn't happen like I was good in 3 months. It took a number of years to get better at it, but it was something I kept working on, that I saw my business grow the same way the more talks I was doing.
Yeah, just getting that local awareness is huge. And like you said, maybe those 50 people, maybe none of them had a foot problem at that time, but maybe one of their member of their family, a friend, maybe in 3 months after that, they remembered your name because you gave a talk about something foot related. So there's a compounding effect. If you do 5 talks with 50 people at them, that's 250 people and then their entire network. And it can really get that local awareness for who you are and what your expertise is.
Yeah. And I think public speaking even almost comes back to, it's part of marketing pillar number 5, verbal marketing, and networking is part of public speaking. I'm always surprised when you're at a networking event and you'll say to someone, oh, so what do you do? And it's almost like they've never been asked that question before. Okay, seriously, you're at a networking event. People are going to ask you, so Tyson, what do you do? Or, oh, no, you should already have it worked out. When somebody says, what do you do? Very well rehearsed, 15 or 20-second little micro bite that you just throw out straight away. Oh, I am Pro Arch Podiatry, and our clinic focuses on keeping active feet healthy. That was what I used to say to people. We focus a lot on sports people, actually prefer weekend warriors, make a lot of inserts for shoes. And it was very clear on what I was actually going to say. I haven't thought about it in 7 years, so that was a bit rough.
That was good. That was pretty good recall considering it was 7 years ago.
So to me, that's how natural. You go to a networking event, you go to a party, people are going to say, hey, so Jim, what do you do? Bang, and you just got to bolt it out. So Jim, what do you do?
I own Podiatry Growth, where I help podiatrists with digital marketing and finding more of their ideal patients. So that's what I do.
Oh, okay. I'm a physiotherapist. Would you be able to help me?
It depends on how big your budget is.
Okay. Do you work with other health professionals or other businesses, or mostly just podiatry? I've never asked
mostly
you
just
before.
Podiatrists, right? Like I'd say 90% of my clients have been podiatrists, but I helped a few physios and a few like health coaches and stuff with some websites and things in the past. So
yeah, it's funny. Like I predominantly just say I only work with podiatrists, but I did coaching last year for a swim school, an IT company, a nutrition business. And it's surprising how similar business is business. I prefer podiatry because I speak the language just easier.
me too. I think it can be helpful to see how other professions and other trades, like what they're trying to achieve with their marketing. So you can kind of dial in on what's working for clinics and people in private practice. But yeah, it's good to have a diverse skill set, but me too, right? Like everything I write on people's websites, everything I write in their blogs, things, I just know little things about the profession that other people just, not that they take for granted, they just don't see it because they've not been through residency, through school, or in practice like we have. So
yeah, like I said, I mentioned it before where I spent 2.5, 3 years coaching dentists, working with a dental company because I was working for them. And that was fine. And probably 95% of everything I spoke about was really easy, except there's that 5% of dental talk, and probably 3 out of the 5% I could get away with because my brother's a dentist. So I understood the language a bit better. But there were some things I don't know what it's like to pull a tooth out of someone's head.
yeah, exactly.
But I do know what it's like to remove an ingrown toenail. So it's a little bit different. Yeah, that crunchy feeling. Anyway, Jim, I think we've covered this. If you're nervous about public speaking, that's all I want to fish on. If you're nervous, it's natural for most people. So just realize, start small and just gradually work your way up, and it will change your life if you can overcome that fear. Big time.
I couldn't agree more. And I think being nervous just means you care. Sometimes the nerves, because you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, which is important to have a good image, or you want to make sure you're helping people and not saying things or sounding like you want to sound like the expert, right? So it's normal to have these nerves. You're human, but the only way to get past them or to push them down a little bit is by putting in the work and taking those opportunities. So I really think this has been a great topic today, Tyson, and hopefully we'll get some more public speakers that'll be following your advice in the profession.
Yep, no, that'd be fantastic. Okay, Jim, talk to you next week.
Sounds great.
Okay, see you.